want to tell you about a condo community in Atlanta. They'd been with the same management company for nearly 20 years. The same faces at all the annual meetings, the same reports handed out every year, and on the surface, everything looked fine, right? Then one day, the board got a call. Emergency repairs were needed. The total came out to nearly $15,000 per unit. Many of the owners are elderly and a lot of them were on fixed incomes. And almost immediately, before the shock had even settled in, the solution was presented. A loan, with interest of course. The management company's own lending arm was providing the loan, or at least offering it. The same organization that had overseen this community for over 2 decades, or nearly 2 decades, while the problem was quietly accumulating, was now offering the finances to carry the crisis that they helped create. That's what happens when visibility comes too late. Someone else gets to define the options. And in this video, I want to show you exactly how that happens and what a board can do about it. My name is Joe Braun and I'm the founder of Solium, but we'll talk more about that later. Month to month, most HOA financial reporting isn't really all that broken. It just was never designed for the job that we're asking for it to do. The standard setup looks like this: monthly financial statements, an annual audit, a reserve study every few years. And if you asked most management professionals, they'd tell you that's actually pretty sufficient. And in most cases it is. But here's the systemic problem. Every one of those documents is retrospective. It tells you what happened last month, last year, 3 years ago when the reserve study was commissioned. HOA and condo management, on the other hand, needs to be forward-looking. When a board sits down to decide whether to raise dues, defer a repair, or absorb cost increases, they're making a bet about the future. But they're making that bet with a rear-view mirror. The technical term for this is information lag. And information lag doesn't just create bad decisions, it creates a specific kind of organizational friction. When the numbers are unclear, people don't sit quietly with uncertainty. They fill it with assumptions, suspicion, worst case thinking, conspiracy theories, right? They just make stuff up. Meetings get longer, legal letters start appearing, not because anything fraudulent happened, but because ambiguity is uncomfortable and people resolve discomfort by assigning blame. Again, they make stuff up. The Atlanta community that I described, I can't say that they were failed by dishonest people, but they were failed by a system that showed them the past while their future quietly deteriorated. Let's be precise about what an annual audit actually does. It confirms compliance. It verifies that the numbers in the past were recorded accurately, and that's genuinely very valuable information. And I'm not suggesting that you stop doing it, but it cannot answer the questions a board is actually asking, or at least the ones that they need to be asking. What happens if your insurance premium increases 18 or 20% next quarter? What happens if the asphalt contractor comes in $40,000 over the reserve study estimate? What happens if you push the roof replacement back 2 years? What does that do to your funding trajectory? A static percent funded number from a 3-year-old reserve study can't answer those questions, and it can't adjust when inflation accelerates. It doesn't update when a vendor quote comes in higher than projected. It doesn't respond when the community's actual conditions diverge from the original assumptions. And here's the thing, communities don't operate on annual cycles. Costs move monthly, sometimes weekly. And the management system should reflect that. What boards need isn't just a snapshot of where they've been, they need a model of where they're going, one that updates as reality changes. I want to address something directly here because the word transparency gets used a lot in HOA management and governance, and it's become so loaded that it's almost meaningless. Homeowners demand it, boards promise it, but very little actually changes. The real issue isn't transparency, it's clarity. When a homeowner doesn't understand the community's financial position, they don't assume the best. In fact, they often assume the worst. When a vendor gets paid and no one can explain the context, questions arise. When reserve balances are unclear, fear builds around the possibility of a special assessment. None of that requires bad intent to happen. It just requires confusion or lack of data. Clarity reduces friction, not because everyone suddenly agrees on everything, but because the numbers can be explained calmly, specifically, and in plain language at any point in the year. Trust isn't manufactured by dashboards and spreadsheets. It's earned when a board member can stand up at a meeting and walk through the community's 5-year financial picture without hesitation. That only happens when the data is alive and current, not archived in some PDF from 2 years ago. Here's a pattern that I've seen repeatedly, and it's almost always the same story. A large special assessment doesn't just appear out of nowhere, it compounds. Insurance increases slightly for 2 years in a row, and the dues aren't adjusted. The reserve study projected lumber at a certain price, but that was before the market moved. A project gets deferred once, then twice, and then the cost estimate from 3 years ago is still sitting in the same spreadsheet, not reflecting reality. Each deviation is small, none of them triggers an alarm, but they stack up, and they compound. And then the board looks up one day, and that gap between where the reserves are and where they need to be is not just a rounding error. It's a $15,000 special assessment. The hard truth is this: most large assessments are not caused by surprise expenses. They're caused by gradual misalignment that wasn't corrected early enough because the reporting system wasn't built to catch it. Dynamic oversight doesn't eliminate hard decisions. No software can do that. But it does make the correction smaller, earlier, and far less disruptive because the board sees the deviation when it's still manageable. That is the entire difference. That's the gap we kept seeing, and it's why Solium exists. Let me explain what it actually does because it's different from anything else that you'll see on the market. Solium is a full HOA management platform. Communications, violations, due collections, budget and transaction management, all of the operational work that a community runs on in one place. But the feature that separates Solium from every other tool in this space is our reserve study management. Here's what that means in practice. Most communities receive their reserve study as a PDF, maybe a spreadsheet if you're lucky. It sits in a folder, it gets referenced at the annual meeting, and for the next 3 to 5 years, it's treated as kind of this foundation of truth, even as every assumption inside of it drifts further and further away from reality. Solium takes that data and makes it live. It makes it dynamic. If a vendor quote comes in higher than the reserve study projected, you update it. If lumber price spikes, if an insurance renewal changes the calculus, if the board decides to accelerate and defer a project, you update it. And the community's entire financial trajectory responds dynamically. You can model out multiple funding scenarios. You can see what a dues adjustment does to the 5-year reserve picture. You can see what happens if you push a project back before you make the decision, not after. Boards that use it walk into any meeting, any homeowner question, any budget challenge, and answer it with data, not estimates or guesses, not like recollections from the last audit, actual current data. That's what informed management looks like. If you sit on a board or you manage a community, I want to leave you with a question. If your insurance premium increased 15 or 20% tomorrow, could you tell your homeowners today what that means for the reserve plan for the next 5 years? Not approximately, not, we'll have to look into it. Specifically, could you tell them exactly what the numbers look like? If the answer is no, that's not a failure on your part. It's not a failure because of effort. It's a failure because of tooling. You don't have the right systems. And the good news is it's solvable. Take a look at Solium. The link is in the description. You can see what dynamic reserve management actually looks like with your community's own data. And if this kind of thinking on condo and HOA management is useful to you, subscribe. This channel exists to help boards and managers make better decisions with better information. That is the job.